The moment police opened that bedroom door, everything changed. A scene so silent, so cold, so unnaturally still, that even the most experienced investigators later admitted they had never seen anything like this before. A promising life cut short. A daughter who had dreams, friends, and plans for tomorrow now lying lifeless, while the world outside continued unaware. The kind of moment where time slows, and a family's future is rewritten forever. But here's a question that still freezes blood to this day. Was Valeria Marquez killed by someone she trusted? Or is the real murder still out there, hidden behind a story everyone accepted too quickly? Imagine her last night. The laughter, the messages, the phone notifications, the final footsteps only she knew she was taking. Viewers will witness a timeline that doesn't sit right. Statements that change. Evidence that appears late. Friends who avoid questions. A crime scene with answers that refuse to speak. This documentary, Unsolved Valeria Marquez Murder Case, reveals every crack, every inconsistency, every moment that makes investigators, and now you, wonder the truth is still buried under silence. Why did witnesses come forward late? Why are digital records incomplete? Why does the timeline have missing hours nobody can account for? And the biggest question, if the case is closed, why does it feel unfinished? Stay with this video till the end. Don't blink. Don't skip, because the detail you might overlook in 1 second could be the key everyone missed. This isn't just a case. This is a mystery demanding answers. Think of what your action means. 1 subscribe means 1 more voice demanding justice. 1 like means 1 more person joining Valeria Marquez's fight. 1 comment means 1 more sign of support for her family. When you subscribe to my channel, you are helping us spread awareness worldwide. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share this video so Valeria Marquez's story never fades. Who was Valeria Marquez? Valeria Marquez was a 23-year-old Mexican model and digital content creator whose public profile expanded rapidly between 2021 and early 2024 after she won the Miss Rostro beauty pageant, an achievement documented in Mexican media reports that marked her entry into regional recognition and commercial visibility. Born in Mexico and later established in Zapopan within the state of Jalisco, she developed an online presence centered on beauty tutorials, personal care routines, fashion conversations, and travel-based lifestyle displays, which positioned her among a growing class of Mexican influencers monetizing personal branding and aesthetic identity through high-engagement media. Her social platforms reflected a curated record of private jets, travel excursions, and brand-aligned self-presentation, and by the time of her death, her Instagram account recorded more than 223,000 followers, while TikTok displayed more than 100,000, confirming a consistent and measurable digital audience. The publicly visible nature of her final moments, live-streamed and abruptly interrupted by violence, produced a forensic timeline that cannot be reconstructed in many homicide inquiries. Her commercial life extended beyond online engagement and included the ownership of Blossom the Beauty Lounge, a beauty salon in Zapopan where she conducted her final live stream. She stated during that broadcast that she was waiting for a courier she knew to deliver a gift and noted that a friend could not see the courier's face when he arrived, adding recorded verbal concern minutes before she appeared to react to an unseen stimulus, placing her hand first to her chest and abdomen before collapsing from camera view. The live stream ended when another woman picked up the device, creating an abrupt termination of visual evidence. Public reports stated that police confirmed her death at approximately 1830 local time. Investigators later reported that 2 men arrived on motorcycles, one of whom entered the salon, and asked if she was Valeria. When she affirmed, he discharged multiple rounds and both men fled the location. The Jalisco prosecutor classified the case under femicide protocol, indicating that gender-based motivation could not be excluded. Media outlets referenced previous private messages where Marquez allegedly suggested that if anything happened to her, she would hold an ex-partner responsible, although the prosecutor formally stated that no individual was designated as a suspect and no direct accusation was filed in the investigative record. Zapopan, despite its commercial affluence, is documented among municipalities with high violent crime frequency, with United States Department of Justice sources linking over half of the region's development to financial laundering associated with drug trafficking operations. The city exists within Jalisco, a state where 15,000 individuals have disappeared since 2018, and where 906 homicides were registered early in the presidential term of Claudia Sheinbaum, according to T Research analysis. These figures contextualize Marquez's case within an environment where investigative proceedings can be influenced by complex jurisdictional dynamics, including allegations of prosecutorial corruption, which the state attorney's office denied publicly. Valeria Marquez therefore existed not only as a public figure, but also as a business owner navigating a region historically affected by cartel activity, gender-based violence, and forensic case backlogs where approximately 90% of crimes are reportedly not investigated to full conclusion. Gender violence statistics published by ECLAC recorded Mexico at 1.3 deaths per 100,000 women in 2023, positioning her death within a measurable national pattern. This is my personal opinion. And before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. Stated cautiously, may consider whether the intersection of beauty industry visibility, recognizability, personal relationships, and public access increase situational vulnerability, although no evidentiary standard currently confirms any single motive, individual, or organized group involvement. Her life remains documented through posts, photographs, and recorded broadcasts, forming a narrative that now exists primarily within investigative archives, rather than ongoing personal development. The day everything changed. On Tuesday in Zapopan, Jalisco, during daytime operating hours at Blossom the Beauty Lounge, routine commercial activity, and an ongoing live broadcast by 23-year-old model and influencer Valeria, Marquez transitioned into a sequence of events that would later be cited in prosecutor statements and national reporting as a confirmed homicide. She was seated within the salon where she awaited a courier delivering a gift, as stated in her final live stream, and she referenced that a friend could not identify the courier's face, which she noted with visible apprehension prior to the arrival of unknown individuals. Within minutes, recorded video captures show her suddenly reaching toward her chest and abdomen before collapsing, the moment marking an irreversible divide between her public presence and the forensic timeline that followed. Local time reports place emergency response and confirmation of death at approximately 18:30, and the live stream ended when another woman present in the room retrieved the device, terminating visual documentation of the scene. Police reports stated that two men on motorcycles approached the salon, and one entered asking directly whether she was Valeria. After vocal confirmation, he discharged a firearm at least twice before fleeing. The event occurred rapidly, leaving witnesses with limited reaction time and investigators reliant on CCTV review, ballistic assessment, and digital traces to reconstruct the minutes preceding the collapse. The Jalisco state prosecutor announced the investigation under Femicide Protocol, a designation that aligns with criteria for gender-motivated homicide under Mexican legal definition. The classification does not, at initial stages, name a perpetrator or identify motive, but instead structures evidence handling with gender violence considerations. Despite the region's known cartel presence, the prosecutor stated publicly that no evidence at the time indicated direct cartel ordering or participation, countering public speculation driven partly by Zapopan's association with organized criminal networks, including CGNG origin points. The environment surrounding the crime was geographically positioned within one of Jalisco's most commercially developed municipal zones, a location that outwardly presents security, paved business districts, and affluent storefront networks. Public reporting has simultaneously acknowledged that more than half of real estate and commercial development in the area carries indicators of financial laundering linked to drug trafficking. Shootings have occurred previously in nearby shopping centers, and the same day Marquez died, former Congressman Luis Armando Cordoba Diaz was murdered 2 kilometers away, creating a temporal parallel that investigators could not ignore, even while asserting no verified evidentiary connection. During the hours following the incident, statements were taken from staff, accessible witnesses, and individuals connected to Marquez, including social media associates who interacted with her online shortly before the live stream ended. Reports highlighted archived messages where Marquez expressed concern about an ex-partner, remarking that if anything happened to her, she would hold him responsible. However, the prosecutor later clarified that the investigation file contained no direct accusations against any specific individual, noting that all statements, video recordings, and social media data were undergoing review without re-victimization and under principles of legality and impartiality. This is my personal opinion. And before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. stating carefully and without conclusion, considers whether her expressed worry regarding the courier's obscured identity signaled pre-incident awareness of potential risk. Although evidentiary thresholds have not established correlation between her remarks and the unidentified attackers, the day becomes a fixed point from which all subsequent investigative chapters originate. A public broadcast interrupted, a business setting transformed into a crime scene, and a timeline now preserved in prosecutorial files where motive is registered as unknown and confirmation of responsible parties remains pending as the inquiry proceeds. Crime scene discovery. The crime scene at Blossom the Beauty Lounge formed the primary evidentiary environment in which the investigation into the death of Valeria Marquez began. An interior layout, witness placement, and final camera angle from her live stream provided initial spatial reference for officials arriving shortly after 1830 local time. Reports indicated that she collapsed in her chair after touching her chest and abdomen, and another woman present terminated the live stream by removing the device. The interior scene contained cosmetic equipment, commercial lighting, and standard salon furnishings, creating a controlled indoor location where ballistic residue, potential prints, and trajectory analysis could later be considered by forensic personnel. The most critical detail was that the murder occurred while broadcasting publicly, meaning the moment of collapse was not only recorded but observed in real time. Responding officers confirmed death at the location, and investigative personnel secured the salon as an active homicide site under femicide protocol. Statements from the prosecutor described the involvement of two men arriving on motorcycles, one entering to verbally confirm her identity before discharging a firearm at least twice. The speed at which the event progressed limited witness interaction and created a short window where forensic capture depended on physical residue not yet obscured by environmental disturbance. CCTV retrieval became an early investigative directive, as camera positioning within and around the salon could assist in reconstructing entry, exit, and movement patterns. Initial observation noted no extended struggle, consistent with reports that the attack unfolded almost immediately following verbal identification. Investigators publicly acknowledged review of CCTV and social media accounts to determine possible perpetrators, and evidence handling proceeded according to gender-based violence protocols, which require particular documentation and sensitivity standards. The courier referenced minutes before the attack raised questions regarding whether the delivery coincided temporally with the shooter's arrival, though no official statement established definable linkage. Ballistic evidence, if recovered, would be expected to undergo caliber identification and potential comparison to known registries, though no public record confirmed a unique match or recovered weapon. The salon, located in an affluent commercial district, maintained characteristics of routine business operation, making the sudden transition into a homicide scene stark against its general purpose. The broader environment of Zapopan has been identified in reporting as a municipality where shootings occurred despite visible security presence, and real estate financing structures have been linked in over half of commercial development cases to laundering activity. These conditions position investigators within a jurisdiction of both high-profile crime and complex prosecutorial trust dynamics, as the state attorney office has historically been accused of cartel association, though publicly denying such claims. Digital evidence formed a distinct component of crime scene processing. The live stream, final verbal statements, and audience comments potentially circumstantially documented her perception of risk before collapse. Archived messages referenced by media included statements where she mentioned an ex-partner, noting responsibility should harm occur, although prosecutors stated explicitly that no direct accusations exist in the investigative file. Physical evidence within the salon, including spatial trajectory and any biological trace, will be relevant if present, yet no official statement confirmed the recovery of DNA, fingerprints, or conclusive ballistic linkage. This is my personal opinion, and before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. Can reasonably note with caution that the lack of extended interaction at the scene suggests premeditated intent by the shooter, whose first verbal line confirmed identity before firing. However, without suspect identification, weapon recovery, or motive confirmation, the crime scene stands mainly as the starting point of a case still dependent on video review, witness testimony, and eventual forensic correlation. The discovery moment therefore remains fixed in investigative sequence: a commercial room, a live stream interrupted, and an evidence field now preserve an ongoing analytical process. The first suspicions. The emergence of initial suspicion in the Valeria Marquez murder case developed not from physical evidence recovered immediately at the salon, but through statements, digital activity, and the contextual environment surrounding her death in Zapopan, Jalisco. As news of the shooting circulated, early discourse centered on the manner of attack. Two unidentified men arriving on motorcycles. One verified her identity verbally before firing multiple shots and fleeing. This specific operational pattern suggested a targeted killing rather than a spontaneous altercation, and investigators confirmed the case was being handled under the femicide protocol, meaning they believed the motive could be linked to gender-based violence. The fact that she was killed during a live stream, a concern expressed minutes earlier regarding a courier whose face was obscured, gave immediate rise to the possibility that she anticipated potential danger shortly before the attack. Public speculation began to focus on organized crime activity in Jalisco due to the region's history with the cartel Jalisco Nueva Generation, CJNG, which originated within the state. Reports acknowledge that Zapopan, despite outward commercial affluence, is among the most violent municipalities in Jalisco, with prior shootings reported even in secured commercial zones. However, authorities publicly stated that, at the time, no evidence directly connected her death to organized criminal groups, countering narratives that emerged on social media platforms within hours of the incident. Without immediate forensic confirmation or suspect identification retrieved from CCTV, investigators instead turned to witness accounts, digital traces, and last interactions preserved online. Attention also shifted towards statements referenced by media in which Marquez allegedly suggested that if anything happened to her, she would hold her ex-partner responsible. Although the public accessed these claims through archive posts, the prosecutor's office clarified that the official investigation file did not contain direct accusations against any individual. The absence of named suspect provided fertile ground for public assumptions, particularly in an environment where femicide cases often develop without rapid arrests. Reports highlighted that more than 90% of crimes in Jalisco go unreported or uninvestigated to full resolution, intensifying suspicion that potential leads might stall or diffuse without definitive conclusion. Social media debates multiplied rapidly, drawing connections between Marquez's high-profile lifestyle, perceived wealth, and visibility. Her influencer status, documented through travel imagery, luxury settings, and a following exceeding 300,000 across platforms, introduced theories that resentment, personal dispute, or extortion could have contributed to a motive. Prosecutors, however, reiterated that evidence did not support organized criminal linkage, nor any specific personal perpetrator at the time of statements. The proximity of another high-profile killing, former Congressman Luis Armando Córdoba Diaz, murdered 2 kilometers away on the same day, added temporal tension, but did not yield investigative overlap. Within investigative circles, the early absence of a suspect produced dual lines of suspicion: interpersonal versus organized motive. The femicide designation emphasized gender-based possibility, while public reporting of previous private concerns toward an ex-partner established an informal narrative branch lacking evidentiary confirmation. CCTV retrieval became critical to determine whether the courier reference before her collapse was coincidentally present or functionally connected. Yet, no public information confirmed whether the courier was identified, questioned, or ruled out. This is my personal opinion. And before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. Presented cautiously, notes that the accuracy with which the shooter requested her identity suggests pre-knowledge rather than random confrontation, potentially aligning closer to personal targeting than indiscriminate violence. Still, without prosecutorial naming or weapon recovery, the first suspicions remain circumstantial reflections dependent on digital evidence, testimonies, and video analysis rather than conclusive forensic markers. In absence of a suspect designation, the initial phase of suspicion stands defined by speculation, procedural caution, and unsettled investigative direction. Statements and contradictions. In the days following the murder of Valeria Marquez, investigators gathered verbal statements from witnesses, associates, online viewers, and individuals referenced in media reports. The earliest statements confirmed that Marquez was live streaming inside Blossom the Beauty Lounge shortly before her death, and that she verbally expressed concern regarding a courier whose face could not be seen. This statement was observed publicly and later cited across multiple outlets as a potential indicator of perceived risk. Other witnesses recounted that two men arrived on motorcycles. One entered, asked if she was Valeria, and after receiving confirmation, fired at least 2 shots before both men fled. These statements align across official and media descriptions, establishing the foundational narrative of a targeted attack. Yet, beyond this shared sequence, discrepancies emerge between informal public accounts, archived social posts, and the official stance of the Jalisco prosecutor, creating early contradiction points within the informational landscape. One set of circulating claims referenced that Marquez had previously suggested that if anything happened to her, she would blame an ex-partner. These posts were amplified on social platforms, some viewers interpreting them as implicit warnings. However, the prosecutor later issued a formal statement clarifying that the investigation file contained no direct accusations against any named individual and that ongoing inquiry aimed to avoid revictimization while maintaining impartiality. Similarly, contradictions surface regarding motive. While social discourse focused heavily on cartel involvement due to Jalisco's documented history with CJNG and local crime patterns, the prosecutor explicitly stated that no evidence supported cartel responsibility. This position stood in contrast to online commentary, where geographic association alone led many to infer organized crime participation. Public speculation also contrasted with an official suggestion that the murder may have been motivated by gender, aligning with femicide classification under Mexican law. The time sequencing of events inside the salon formed another area requiring verification. The live stream visually documented Marquez receiving a pink stuffed animal, speaking about the courier, expressing nervousness, and then abruptly reacting as if struck. However, the precise moment of gunfire was not captured from a visible angle after she turned slightly off-frame, and the stream ended when another woman removed the device. Some statements circulated online suggesting additional people heard preliminary noises or saw movement before the visible collapse, but no official record confirmed audible warning, verbal altercation, or defensive response from Marquez prior to impact. As a result, witness recollections, digital evidence, and the live stream form overlapping but incomplete versions of the same brief timeline, each requiring forensic reconciliation. Contradictions also appeared in assumptions regarding security context. Zapopan, described outwardly as affluent and orderly, is simultaneously cited in reporting as one of the most violent municipalities in Jalisco, suggesting contrasting narratives of safety versus risk within the same environment. Statement of public shock reflect the perceived security of luxury districts, while statistical context, 906 homicides early in the presidential term and 15,000 disappearances since 2018, indicate a region where targeted attacks may occur even in commercial zones. This is my personal opinion, and before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. Position with caution suggests that contradictions arose because the public narrative formed faster than investigated confirmation could keep pace, with social media distributing impressions, anxieties, and infer relationships long before evidence threshold matured. Without a publicly identified suspect, weapon recovery, or verified motive, statements remain a mixture of confirmed fact and unverified recollection, creating an investigative field where contradictions must be resolved through CCTV analysis, forensic interpretation, and later legal examination rather than early assumptions. Digital forensics and CCTV trail. Digital forensics became a central pillar of the investigative response into the death of Valeria Marquez, given that her final moments were recorded during a live stream and that video surveillance infrastructure is common in commercial areas of Zapopan. Investigators publicly confirmed that CCTV footage was being reviewed to identify the assailants who arrived on motorcycles and that digital traces across her social media accounts were under analysis. Screenshots, comments, and archived live stream segments formed a unique body of potential evidence, as they documented her verbal remarks regarding a courier and her visible reaction immediately before collapsing. The recording captured her touching her chest and abdomen, then falling from frame, marking the visible endpoint before the stream was terminated by another woman present. Digital footage thus became the only direct visual record of the incident, distinguishing this case from others where no real-time capture exists. The CCTV trail, according to official statements, could assist investigators in mapping the route and timeline of the motorcycles, identifying whether the shooters conducted pre-event surveillance or fled through a specific exit corridor. Given Zappopin's urban layout and the salon's placement in a commercially active district, cameras may exist on adjacent storefronts, traffic junctions, and private security systems. However, no public release confirmed whether footage provided identifiable facial markers, license plates, or movement patterns sufficient for suspect designation. Absence of such confirmation leaves CCTV value an active but undisclosed element of the investigative process. Digital forensics extended beyond video review. Investigators began tracking Marquez's social media communications, including her comments during the live stream referencing concern about a courier whose face was not visible. Archived messages disseminated through media suggested she previously warned that if anything happened to her, she would hold an ex-partner responsible. But these statements, though widely circulated, are not reflected in prosecutorial designation of a suspect. The divergence between public speculation and official silence reinforced reliance on forensic digital analysis rather than narrative-driven assumption. Authorities reported that all statements, videos, and social media publications were being examined without re-victimization, adhering to principles of legality and human rights. This included evaluation of posts that documented her travel, luxury assets, and public visibility, elements which could establish potential exposure to threats or extortion motives. Her accounts displayed travel on private jets, yacht excursions, and branded lifestyle content, reflecting a high online profile that may have been monitored by unknown observers. Yet, no public information indicates whether location data, message logs, or account access history yielded actionable leads. The intersection of digital exposure and physical vulnerability remains a critical axis in understanding risk, but evidence thresholds for concluding intent or perpetrator identity have not been met. The live stream, while central, presented limitations. The angle did not show the entry of the shooter, nor the exact moment the weapon was fired, suggesting that supplementary CCTV footage is required to reconstruct the scene. Audio quality may contain peripheral cues, but no official disclosure confirms gunshot detection or verbal content beyond recorded remarks. Forensic teams could analyze frame-by-frame segments for reflective movement or lighting changes, although environmental variables could limit clarity. Digital metadata, including timestamps, viewer interactions, and comment logs, may support time reconstruction. If investigators access device storage, internal phone records could reveal recent calls or message threads. However, no official statement confirms recovery of device-level forensic extractions, and it remains unknown whether phone content was fully cloned or partially analyzed. The courier reference remains unresolved digitally, as neither identity confirmation nor motive linkage has been publicized. This is my personal opinion. And before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. Presented cautiously, suggests that digital forensics may eventually prove decisive if cross-referenced with CCTV tracking and social media patterns, as targeted killings often involve pre-event surveillance footprints. Still, without public confirmation of identifiable faces or traceable vehicles, digital evidence currently serves as a foundation for potential leads rather than definitive proof. The CCTV trail remains an investigative line awaiting correlation, rendering the digital layer of this case both promising and presently incomplete. Autopsy and forensic evidence. The autopsy and forensic phase of the Valeria Marquez investigation moved forward under femicide protocol, establishing a medical legal framework to determine cause of death, wound characteristics, and potential presence of biological or ballistic trace evidence. While public reporting confirms that she was shot inside her salon shortly after identifying herself to an unknown man, no detailed forensic report has been released specifying bullet caliber, trajectory analysis, or the number of entry and exit wounds beyond references to at least 2 shots. Autopsy in femicide cases in Mexico typically seeks to document type of firearm injury, bullet path, hemorrhage pattern, and time of death, along with clothing analysis to evaluate burn marks or gunpowder residue. Authorities confirmed her death at about 18:30 local time, indicating a rapid fatal outcome consistent with critical wound placement. The moment she clasped her chest and abdomen on live stream visually marked the probable timing of lethal injury, creating a rare instance where approximate time of death is visible in real time. Forensic teams likely inspected clothing for residue, yet no statement confirms whether gunshot residue (GSR) was detected. GSR tests, when conducted, may indicate fire in proximity, but indoor airflow, fabric absorption, or scene disturbance can reduce reliability. Public information has not clarified whether ballistic fragments were retrieved, whether bullets were removed during autopsy, or whether any ballistic comparison database was engaged. Without access to a weapon-bullet comparison cannot yet establish unique firearm linkage, and no recovery of shells or casings has been publicly confirmed, leaving the forensic dimension without the conclusive anchor that firearm analysis provides. The autopsy would also address whether she sustained additional trauma beyond gunshot wounds. However, available reporting presents no evidence of struggle, defensive wounds, or assault markers aside from firearm injury. The attack occurred quickly, reducing likelihood of prolonged altercation and limiting biological transfer opportunities, such as skin cell exchange or hair trace. If DNA swabs of clothing or surroundings were collected, results have not been disclosed, and degraded indoor surfaces or object handling before police arrive could impede clarity. Toxicology, as standard procedure, may have been conducted to evaluate presence of substances, although no information suggests intoxication, restraint, or sedation. The live stream displayed her alert and conversing minutes before collapse, indicating cognitive coherence immediately preceding injury. Scene forensics would involve blood pattern analysis to determine firing direction and distance, yet the camera angle does not show impact location, and investigators have not released photographs or trajectory diagrams. The absence of visual capture of the shooter means forensic reconstruction depends on physical scene mapping rather than direct footage of the discharge. Femicide protocol requires examination for gender-based indicators, including whether threats, harassment, or prior reports exist. The Jalisco prosecutor confirmed that her file held no formal complaints requesting protection, despite widely circulated public messages referencing an ex-partner. The absence of formal documentation reduces evidentiary weight of digital statements unless corroborated by device extraction or witness confirmation. Ballistic analysis remains crucial, yet unresolved. Without retrieval of the firearm, forensic laboratories cannot perform rifling pattern comparison or establish a match. Firearm caliber, if inferred from wound morphology, would remain an estimate until projectile retrieval. The recovery of spent casings can enable ejection mark comparison to known weapons, but no statement confirms such evidence. This is my personal opinion. And before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. Offer with caution observes that the precision of the shots and immediate fatal result may indicate familiarity with firearm handling, although this assumption cannot replace forensic conclusion. The controlled indoor environment could have preserved ballistic trace had investigators arrived quickly, yet contamination risk rises with movement of personnel, medical responders, or secondary contact. With no confirmed DNA match, no weapon, and no ballistic registry integration reported, the autopsy and forensic layer currently establishes cause of death, but not culprit identity. Forensic evidence situates the case within homicide classification conclusively, yet remains incomplete in its investigative potential until physical markers, digital correspondence, or weapon recovery bridge the evidentiary gap that persists in the ongoing inquiry. Suspect focus emerges. The progression from evidence collection to suspect consideration in the case of Valeria Marquez began not with named individual, but through elimination, public speculation, and procedural filtering under femicide investigation protocol. Authorities confirmed that as of the early stages, no direct accusations, arrest warrants, or official suspect designations were entered into the investigation file. This position, stated publicly by the Jalisco prosecutor's office, contrasted sharply with the rapid formation of narratives circulating on social media platforms, where users highlighted archive posts in which Marquez had allegedly implied concern relating to an ex-partner. Such messages were referenced widely in digital discourse, yet remain unconfirmed as formal complaints or legal filings. The prosecutor clarified that no protective request had been made to municipal authorities prior to her death. The absence of declared suspect despite public fixation on potential personal connections created a vacuum where theories accelerated faster than investigative confirmation. Initial suspect focus therefore emerged indirectly, shaped by contextual factors rather than naming. The method of attack, two men arriving on motorcycles, verifying her identity verbally, firing at least twice, then escaping, indicated premeditation rather than opportunistic violence. Investigators reported reviewing CCTV to trace direction of entry and exit, but no public detail confirms whether the motorcycle route yielded identifiable markers. If captured clearly, trajectory analysis could narrow the pool of possible perpetrators, but officials have not released findings, preserving investigative discretion. Speculation regarding cartel linkage surfaced immediately due to Zapopan's history with CJNG and high-profile criminal incidents. However, the prosecutor stated that no evidence supported cartel involvement. This statement redirected attention toward gender-based motive, aligning with femicide classification parameters. The classification signaled recognition that violence may have been driven by gender-based animus rather than financial or territorial intent. Still, absence of forensic markers tying any individual to the weapon delayed the transition from general suspicion to targeted inquiry. Digital behavior also shaped suspect focus. Live stream data captured her visible unease regarding the courier, who delivered a stuffed animal shortly before the shooting. She stated that her friend could not see the courier's face, raising possible relevance. Yet no official record declares whether investigators identified, interviewed, or ruled out the courier. Without confirmation, the courier remains a factual presence but not a designated suspect. The woman who ended the live stream by taking the phone acted as a responder rather than participant in the incident, with no reporting indicating suspicion directed toward her. The central gap remains. Those who entered with lethal intent have not been publicly identified, though the precision of their question, "Are you Valeria?" implies pre-existing knowledge rather than accidental encounter. Theories developed along two principal lines: interpersonal dispute versus targeted external execution. The interpersonal branch stems from archived statements referencing an ex-partner, though unsupported by legal filing. The external branch derives from geographic criminal context and operational style of attack. Authorities, however, maintain no confirmed link to organized crime and no named individual under accusation. Investigative strategy likely prioritizes cross-referencing digital data, CCTV, ballistic analysis, and communication logs. If the shooters conducted pre-incident surveillance, digital footprints, such as phone tower pings, location data from accounts, or message exchanges could eventually surface. The fact that the killer requested confirmation suggests knowledge of her appearance and schedule. Whether this knowledge originated from personal proximity or external monitoring remains unresolved. This is my personal opinion. And before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. Stated cautiously, proposes that the absence of early suspect naming may reflect insufficient forensic anchoring rather than investigative stagnation. The deliberate nature of the attack suggests familiarity, but presence of organized crime in the region renders random external commissioning theoretically possible. Without weapon recovery, facial identification, or corroborated digital linkage, suspect emergence remains inferential rather than formal. The investigative trajectory therefore proceeds on parallel paths: personal history evaluation and criminal pattern analysis, until a tangible evidentiary lead elevates one hypothesis to actionable status in legal terms. Motive theories. The search for motive in the Valeria Marquez case developed through layered interpretation rather than declared evidence, as investigators released no official conclusion identifying why the attack occurred. Under femicide protocol, motive evaluation must consider gender-based aggression, personal conflict, financial dispute, and potential involvement of organized groups, though public statements indicate that no direct connection to cartels has been established. This left motive theorization largely supported by contextual indicators, social records, and crime pattern analysis rather than confirmed forensic linkage. Gender-based violence remains a documented issue in Mexico, with ECLAC reporting 1.3 deaths per 100,000 women nationally in 2023, situating the crime statistically within an environment where aggression toward women is not anomalous. The fact that Marquez publicly speculated about being kidnapped moments before collapse introduced an unsettling precursor to her death, though this statement alone does not confirm motive. The first motive theory, widely circulated in online communities, concerns potential interpersonal conflict. Archive posts referenced by media suggested Marquez indicated that if anything ever happened to her, she would blame an ex-partner, although this narrative captured public focus. The prosecutor stated that the investigative file does not contain direct accusations. and there is no municipal record of her requesting assistance related to threats. Absence of formal reporting weakens evidentiary weight of the claim. Yet the existence of such statements gives personal relationship motive continued prominence in public speculation. If interpersonal dynamics were involved, digital message records or testimony could later corroborate this line, but no such confirmation has been disclosed. A second theory considers gender-based targeting unrelated to intimate relations, but stemming from public visibility, online influence, or perceived autonomy. Investigators classified the case as femicide, a legal designation acknowledging potential gender-motivated harm. This does not confirm motive, but enables forensic approach under gender violence standards. Femicide classification also aligns with national statistics, showing high rates of violence against women, and several cases have historically involved public figures or women in visible professions. Whether visibility itself heightened risk remains a theory lacking conclusive evidence, but her online profile, lifestyle displays, and business ownership suggest motive could originate from target resentment or opportunistic aggression. A third motive theory examines organized crime context. Jalisco is a documented center of cartel activity, and Zapopan specifically has been linked to laundering operations and frequent shootings. However, prosecutors directly stated that no evidence supports cartel involvement. The precision of the attack, motorcycles, rapid execution, immediate escape, resembles patterns observed in professional hits, yet such operational style alone cannot establish cartel responsibility. Geographic coincidence does not satisfy legal threshold for motive classification, particularly without ballistic registry match or identified suspects. The killing of former Congressman Luis Armando Córdoba Diaz 2 kilometers away the same day intensified speculation, but officials have not linked the cases. A fourth theory surrounds potential extortion or financial targeting, derived from Marquez's public display of wealth and social influence. Her Instagram featured private jets, yachts, international travel, and beauty business ownership, potentially portraying resource access attractive to criminal intent. However, no evidence confirms that she reported extortion attempts or financial threats, and no communication logs have been publicly detailed. Without ransom demand, property loss, or financial trail, this theory remains unanchored. Finally, a courier connection theory remains unsettled. Moments before the attack, Marquez stated her friend could not see the courier's face, raising questions about delivery timing. Whether the courier was present coincidentally or served as reconnaissance is unknown. No public update confirms if courier identity was traced or cleared. This is my personal opinion. And before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. Delivered cautiously, observe that the attacker's direct question, "Are you Valeria?" suggests specific targeting rather than random attack, making personal or premeditated motive statistically plausible. Yet, the absence of forensic correlation, weapon recovery, or named suspects prevents any theory from exceeding hypothetical status. As of documented reporting, motive remains unresolved, built on parallel narratives awaiting evidentiary elevation rather than confirmed conclusion. Court hearings and investigative shifts. The transition from investigative groundwork to procedural oversight in the Valeria Marquez case moved into institutional space through statements issued by the Jalisco prosecutor's office rather than public court hearings involving suspects, as no arrests or named individuals had been brought forward at the time of reporting. Proceedings therefore focus on investigative updates rather than formal hearings, and press briefings acted as the primary conduit for legal communication. The prosecutor confirmed that the case was classified under femicide protocol and that all statements, videos, and social media posts were being evaluated with adherence to legality, impartiality, and respect for human rights. The office emphasized that there were no direct accusations in the investigation file and no designated perpetrator identified. The absence of a suspect at the court stage meant that procedural focus remained on evidence validation, not indictment, leaving the judicial system engaged but not yet prosecutorially activated. Early investigative shifts were visible in how authorities addressed public speculation. Questions surrounding cartel involvement were directly refuted by official statements noting no evidence linking the murder to organized criminal groups. This clarification redirected investigative attention toward gender-based motive assessment and interpersonal context exploration. Simultaneously, Messaging highlighted review of CCTV footage and digital forensics to identify attackers who arrived on motorcycles and confirm her identity verbally before shooting. As evidence progressed, no announcement confirmed retrieval of ballistic matches, weapon recovery, or positive identification from video analysis, indicating investigative progression without decisive outcome. Institutional discourse emphasized impartiality. The prosecutor's office reiterated that the investigation was developing under judicial and forensic standards designed to avoid re-victimization. Statements also noted that gender-based protocol governs evidence handling, requiring analysis of relationship history, prior messages, and threats where documented. Yet reports confirmed that the municipal office held no record of Marquez requesting assistance or reporting threats, despite media references to messages in which he allegedly warned that if she were harmed, she would blame an ex-partner. This contrast between public narrative and institutional documentation generated procedural distance, as the absence of formal complaint limited weight on personal suspicion lines. Court-related communication also integrated statistical framing. References to homicide rates, disappearance numbers, and crime underreporting contextualized investigative demand within a region where more than half of commercial development is associated with financial laundering and where violent crimes frequently remain unresolved. Public updates indirectly acknowledge limits of investigative capacity in high-crime zones, especially where firearm recovery and suspect identification remain elusive. Within this procedural landscape, hearings focus less on defendants and more on confirming investigative direction, reinforcing the unresolved nature of the case. Investigative shifts develop gradually. The initial emphasis on determining whether cartel involvement existed transitioned toward verification of interpersonal threats, courier identity, and digital trail reconstruction. The courier mentioned in the live stream remained a point of inquiry, though no public outcome confirmed his involvement or clearance. With no arrests, formal hearings to evaluate detention eligibility or to present evidence before a judge have not been reported. Instead, procedural discussion occurred through prosecutorial briefings outlining ongoing work rather than courtroom confrontation. Authorities stated that all video material, including live stream footage and CCTV recordings, was being reviewed. If frame analysis or external camera capture yielded identifiable markers, such data has not been disclosed publicly. Closed court forensic progress, if underway, remains confidential until prosecutorial threshold is met. Mexico's femicide framework requires substantial evidence for suspect designation, including correlation between motive indicators and physical or digital linkage. This is my personal opinion. And before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. Applied cautiously, suggests that investigative shifts demonstrate systematic method rather than stagnation, with authorities prioritizing narrowing fields of suspicion before court engagement, with no suspect present. The judicial phase stands in anticipation rather than active litigation. Future hearings would emerge only when digital forensics, CCTV enhancement, ballistic recovery, or testimony identifies a subject with evidentiary basis strong enough for indictment. Until then, the court exists as a procedural stage awaiting activation, and investigative movement continues within internal case files rather than public trial proceedings. The case remains in a state where institutional focus is active, but judicial confrontation has not yet materialized due to the absence of verified perpetrator. Social media reaction and public pressure. Social media platforms became the primary arena for public reaction following the death of Valeria Marquez, and the speed at which commentary expanded surpassed the pace of formal investigative disclosure. Within hours of the incident, clips from her final live stream circulated across TikTok, Instagram, and news outlets, prompting audience discussion about her last words, her visible worry regarding an unidentified courier, and the abrupt moment in which she touched her chest and collapsed. Users began constructing timelines independent of official reports, often combining verified observations with unconfirmed speculation. Screenshots of posts in which she allegedly stated that if anything happened to her, she would blame an ex-partner were shared widely, despite the prosecutor clarifying that the investigation file contained no direct accusations and that investigators had received no formal complaints filed by Marquez requesting protection. The immediacy of public interpretation created a narrative atmosphere in which online consensus appeared to form faster than evidentiary conclusions. Public engagement was driven not only by emotional response, but also by visibility. Marquez maintained more than 223,000 followers on Instagram and over 100,000 on TikTok, meaning her death reached a demographic familiar with her lifestyle content, beauty tutorials, and travel posts. Influencer peers reposted images, expressed condolences, and demanded clarity. Hashtags related to her case trended regionally, and news outlets amplified online mourning. Several users argued that her final live stream might contain overlooked visual cues, prompting independent frame-by-frame analysis by viewers who slowed video segments, searching for shadows, reflections, or audio anomalies. This online dissection produced contradictory interpretations. Some insisted her comments regarding the courier implied pre-existing fear. Others argued she appeared generally conversational rather than visibly distressed until a moment of impact. Public frustration heightened when no suspects were announced and no arrests followed initial investigation steps. Female activists referenced national femicide statistics, calling for accountability under gender violence frameworks. Comments demanded transparency on CCTV retrieval, courier identification, and ballistic progress. Journalists requested updates regarding whether forensic analysis yielded DNA, GSR presence, or weapon information, but no such details were released publicly. This absence of public-facing developments generated impression among some observers that the investigation was stalled, although authorities reiterated that analysis was ongoing and required procedural time. Online petitions call for intensified investigative resources, while discussion forums archive case developments chronologically to maintain pressure. Marquez's digital visibility contributed to sustained attention. Her travel photographs, salon branding, and luxury imagery circulated alongside crime reports, creating a juxtaposition between aspirational lifestyle and abrupt homicide. Some public voices framed her death within broader discussion of violence against women in Mexico, noting that gender-based murders remain common and many cases lack resolution. Others question whether influencers face heightened scrutiny or risk due to publicly accessible schedules and identifiable locations. News media aggregated social reaction, integrating trending commentary into reports and referencing online narratives alongside official statements. This dual information flow created an environment where public perceptions sometimes diverged from legal reality. While online users presented potential motives, investigators refrained from confirming any hypothesis without evidence. The prosecutor emphasized impartiality, legality, and non-revictimization, signaling priority to prevent digital judgment from substituting due process. This is my personal opinion, and before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. Stated cautiously, suggests that public involvement may function both as pressure and support, maintaining visibility that can encourage investigative continuation while simultaneously risking misinformation that complicates case narrative. Social networks preserve memory, discussion, and collective expectation for justice, yet without confirmed evidentiary advancement. Public pressure remains energetic rather than transformative. As of available reporting, social reaction forms an ongoing external force surrounding the case, reinforcing the unresolved tension between digital inquiry and formal investigation, unanswered questions that still haunt. The investigation into the death of Valeria Marquez enters stage defined less by confirmed findings and more by unresolved elements that maintain public and institutional uncertainty. The core of these outstanding questions resides in the absence of a named suspect, the lack of weapon recovery, and the incomplete picture of events leading to her final live stream. Authorities confirm that the case is being investigated under femicide protocol and that digital, video, and testimonial evidence continues to be examined. Still, no official update has clarified whether ballistic fragments were retrieved, whether shell casings were identified, or whether CCTV analysis produced recognizable facial features or vehicle markers. The primary recorded point of collapse remains the live stream itself, capturing her visible reaction but not the shooter's presence. The camera had turned at the moment critical to identification, creating a permanent evidentiary blind spot between the visible timeline and the act of shooting. Questions persist regarding the courier reference minutes before the attack. Marquez stated that her friend could not see the courier's face, and she expressed uncertainty about why the package was not simply delivered and left. This detail stands unresolved, as no public information confirms whether the courier was located interviewed, or cleared. If the courier was unrelated, the timing remains coincidental. If related, identifying this individual could hold pivotal relevance. The absence of disclosure reinforces speculation about whether the courier served as delivery, observer, or signal. Another unanswered question concerns archived messages in which Marquez allegedly indicated she would blame an ex-partner if anything happened to her. Despite widespread circulation online, the prosecutor stated that no direct accusations exist in the investigative file, and that she never filed an official complaint requesting protection. This raises inquiry about the context of those statements, whether they were offhand, private warnings, or reflections of interpersonal tension. Without corroborative records or testimonial confirmation, their evidentiary weight remains limited. The role of CCTV footage also remains unknown to the public. Investigators confirmed review of available recordings, but no report verifies whether entry or exit routes were captured clearly, whether number plates were visible, or whether masks obscured identities. Urban infrastructure suggests multiple camera placements are probable, yet the degree of usable footage is undisclosed. If high-definition captures exist, their non-release may indicate ongoing pursuit of suspects. If unclear recordings exist, investigative progress may depend on parallel evidence streams. The broader environment contributes additional unanswered questions. Zapopan's violent crime rates, real estate money laundering connections, and proximity to CJNG operations prompted speculation, yet prosecutors deny cartel involvement. This raises a dilemma. If not cartel-driven, why was the attack executed with operational precision characteristic of targeted killings? If personal motive was central, why no immediate suspect naming? If extortion was attempted, why no financial trail surfaced? Public scrutiny asks whether digital exposure increased risk. Marquez's online presence displayed travel, luxury, and identifiable movement patterns, potentially rendering her accessible to surveillance. Whether her visibility made her vulnerable remains a theory without supporting documentation. Another unresolved dimension is forensic completeness. No public information confirms whether gunshot residue tests, fingerprint swabs, or DNA trace analysis yielded results. If biological trace exists, its viability depends on contamination control, environmental factors, and sensitivity of lab extraction. Without a suspect for comparison, even recovered DNA would remain incomplete. This is my personal opinion. And before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. Applied cautiously, observes that the greatest unanswered question may be whether motive clarity precedes suspect identification or vice versa. If investigators identify individuals via CCTV enhancement, cellular tracking, or ballistic recovery, motive may surface retrospectively. Conversely, if motive is established through digital communication patterns, suspect recognition could follow. Until one variable resolves, the unanswered questions continue to define the case rather than the evidence that remains available. As documented, the investigation holds open threads rather than closed conclusions, maintaining a space where the unresolved aspects of Marquez's final hours continue to shape public memory and investigative direction. Current status. The current status of the investigation into the death of Valeria Marquez remains defined by active inquiry without the identification or detention of a perpetrator. Prosecutor statements confirm that the case continues under femicide protocol, meaning the crime is legally approached as a potential gender-motivated killing unless proven otherwise. Officials have reiterated that all available social media publications, video recordings, and testimonial statements are under ongoing review, and authorities maintain that no direct accusations exist in the investigative file against any individual. No arrest has been conducted to date, and no indictment has been filed naming a suspect. Despite global visibility, millions of video impressions, and widespread digital discussion, the case stands publicly without a confirmed assailant, motive determination, or prosecutorial designation. Investigative efforts continue to rely on CCTV extraction, digital footprint analysis, and forensic consistency checks. Public reporting states that authorities are reviewing security footage related to the two men who arrived on motorcycles and fled after verifying her identity, though no disclosure confirms whether enhanced footage produced identifiable markers, such as vehicle registration, gait analysis, or facial recognition data. Analysts maintain that such material, if sufficiently clear, could theoretically support a future arrest, but absent public confirmation, the evidentiary status of CCTV remains internally held by investigators. Without access to the weapon used in the attack, ballistic comparison remains incomplete, further limiting courtroom-ready progress. Digital evidence remains a central asset, but still inconclusive in open-source understanding. The live stream records her final visible moments, yet it does not capture the shooter directly. Social platforms preserve her voice, noting unease regarding a courier whose identity has not been publicly established. Metadata, message history, and device extraction, if carried out, are not disclosed publicly, and prosecutors have not confirmed whether communication logs produce meaningful leads. Questions persist regarding whether timestamps from phone records, comment logs, or location tracking provided investigative direction. Government officials have responded periodically to public scrutiny, affirming legality, impartiality, and non-revictimization in evidence handling. The office has also addressed public speculation by stating that no proof links organized criminal groups to the murder, countering narratives that formed quickly across networks due to Zapopin's known crime context. This position redirects current status framing into a procedural zone where motive is not declared and investigative bandwidth is distributed across multiple theoretical branches. Personal, gender-based, opportunistic targeting, or circumstantially unrelated coincidence. The absence of prosecutorial updates reinforces both investigative privacy and public frustration. Civil response continues through memorialization, petition activity, and social advocacy emphasizing broader femicide issues in Mexico. Activists, journalists, and online communities call for resolution, citing national statistics and the frequency of unresolved cases. Influencer communities continue referencing her death to highlight risks faced by women in public spaces and visible professions. News outlets revisit the case during crime reports, gender violence coverage, or public policy discussion, preserving visibility even as official progress remains largely sealed from external commentary. Procedurally, the case sits in pre-indictment investigative stage. Evidence collection is not reported as exhausted, indicating that officials have not closed a file or shifted it to archive classification. The investigation remains open, pending development of new leads that satisfy evidentiary thresholds. Whether digital breakthroughs emerge through algorithmic facial enhancement, witness recollection, or external tip submission remains uncertain. This is my personal opinion. And before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. Stated cautiously, suggests the current status may reflect a case at investigative midpoint rather than decline, where evidence exists but lacks correlation strong enough for legal action. If ballistic fragments surface, CCTV quality improves through enhancement, or communication logs reveal connected interactions, a shift towards suspect identification may eventually occur. Conversely, if invasive elements remain untraceable and key evidence remains inconclusive, probability suggests that the case could settle into prolonged inquiry. At present, the official status remains unresolved, active, and awaiting new verification capable of transitioning investigative work into prosecution. The case of Valeria Marquez remains open, categorized under femicide protocol, yet without a named suspect, verified motive, ballistic match, or confirmed identification of the two men who entered the salon and fled after requesting her identity. Digital evidence exists, but a live stream does not capture the shooter, and CCTV status has not been publicly clarified. Investigators state that social media posts, statements, and recordings are under review, though no official disclosure confirms whether forensic material, courier identification, or communication logs have progressed toward prosecution. A public killing seen online by thousands sits without a perpetrator documented in court. The unanswered questions regarding motive, courier identity, potential interpersonal tension, and digital trace correlation sustain investigative uncertainty. Authorities deny cartel involvement, yet absence of suspect designation leaves cause unresolved. Evidence files remain active, not archived, but outcomes remain pending. Public attention continues, with social advocacy demanding accountability. The case persists as both a documented homicide and an unresolved inquiry. This is my personal opinion. And before that, if I'm wrong, you must tell me in the comments. Express cautiously, acknowledges that justice depends on whether future forensic or digital correlation emerges. Until then, the file stands open, active, and incomplete, neither forgotten nor concluded.